Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. I do a podcast called It's Good to Talk, and I'm sure it's good to talk. Been on here, many podcasts, on and on and on and on. My book I wrote is, and that's how it all started, by Stoney McGurn. His story is from 1941 up until recently. You can buy it on Amazon. It's also on audio for those of you that have bad eyesight, like myself. The sponsors are Liffey Van Lines, moving company here in New York City, and they've been running longer than the New York City Marathon. Running very smoothly, expanding a lot, doing great work, because you cannot buy experience or wisdom, so I'm told. My sponsor, the Irish Examiner USA, great newspaper here in New York City and surrounds. Lots of updates on music and events and stories. This week it had a big full story about Adrian Flanley, who was a broadcaster radio guy from County Mayo, but his work was here in New York City, the Adrian Flanley radio show. I'm sure many of the Irish listeners here will remember Adrian for great interviews. Indeed, he interviewed me maybe a long, long time ago when I was working for a travel agency, War Travel, out in Queens. But Paddy McCarthy of the Irish Examiner gave Adrian and his good wife and friends full page and centre page coverage, updates on funeral arrangements, and a celebration of his life will be here in the city sometime later this month. But get the Irish Examiner, you can get it online, e-paper, and you'll get updated on all that. I was supposed to have a guest today, but we had some technical issues, but I can tell you a lot about him. Brian Leyden has been on before. He's a historian, he's a writer, he's written several books. I've read 3 of them. The Home Place is a beautiful book. I'll put up this little flyer there, if I can, yeah. And Summer of 63 is a very interesting book, because everybody thinks it's about JFK and that, and all the curiosity, but it goes into a lot of the stories. Now, Sweet Old World Stories was the last book I read of Brian's, and it didn't intrigue me at first, because sometimes people say about the cover of the book and the content. So the cover kind of put me off, but then when I got reading it, I said, yes, the inside of the book is better than the outside of the book. So I really enjoyed reading all of these stories, and they're well worthwhile. Brian himself was over in Uganda the last few months on a mission tour, so he was supposed to be here with me yesterday, but he will be here in the next week or so. Now, you can, in the meantime, email me if you have any questions about Uganda. It's in East Africa, population, I think, of 47 million, 48 million. You can correct me. Very friendly people. Questions I will have for Brian Leyden. And if you want to add more questions, I want to know about the education system. I want to know about the health system. I want to know about the infrastructure. I want to know about the food. And yes, I want to know about the drink. I want to know, can you get a good pint of Guinness over there? Or do I have to go all the way down to the end of Mayo, over to Lacken, to a bar called Bessie's to get a pint? And that'll probably cost me €10 plus tip. Now, how much is a pint, Brian, in Uganda? I bet you get a pint in Uganda for €3. Well, and tip, of course, yeah. Tip might be more than the pint. Anyways, without further ado, I want to get on with some stuff that's coming up. Jimmy Carter will be 100 years old this year in October. Keep that in mind. The New York City Marathon is coming up again around November the 5th, and Adam Cardona of the Elite Healers told me to remind you runners that don't leave your training until the last week. Not a good idea. If you're training for the Olympics, you're training for years, not months. But Adam Cardona, Elite Healer, says you need to get it together. If you haven't started, it's not too late. But start slowly, he says, and get your warm-ups and you're out and about and run. And he has great advice. So you can Google Adam Cardona. You'll get him. He's on Park Avenue there. And you can also look up. He is a sports massage therapist. So you might need him after you run the New York City Marathon, 26 point something miles. That was established by the Queen of England, just to convene her. So it stopped right in front of her palace, I guess. So anyways, let me move on with other stuff that I have in mind today. I want to do a lot of talking today about Irish radio. RTE is the national broadcasting company in Ireland. They've been established since 1926, after the Civil War. And then the television opened up around 1961. And it's state-owned, so it means the government set it up, and it was state-run. It was actually officially opened by Dr. Douglas Hyde, who was the first president of Ireland. Very well-educated man, very interested man, great guy to be the first president of Ireland. Buried in French Park, County Roscommon, where I lived there for about 5 years. Quite close to his grave, but not that close to the grave, because I tend to keep away from the graveyard. Now, RTE, state-owned, just like Radio Moscow, Russia Radio, state-owned, which means what the government wants the radio to broadcast is what the radio will broadcast. So it's a huge influence between the radio station and the politics that goes on with it. Okay? And there was a lot of that, and especially, say, during World War II, with various censorship, because if you remember at that time, Churchill wanted Ireland, he asked de Valera, was it okay to use the ports like Dublin Port, Cork Port, and Belfast Port if things got more intense with the war? And de Valera refused him, which was a very, very bad idea, I think, and in hindsight, because Churchill was willing to give back the six counties for that simple favour. And Churchill was pissed off, of course, with de Valera. But as Brian Leyden said when he was on here in one of his history talks, de Valera was the type of guy who was never around when you needed him, okay? And when he was around, he was clumsy. He was born here, as I mentioned before in the podcast, in New York City, up in Lenox Hill Hospital. They didn't keep him there, half blind anyway. Anyways, getting back to him in particular, I guess, well, not in particular. So you have RTE there, and they're state-run. They charge a license fee, which is administered by the post office, also government-owned institution on post, it's called. A license, I believe, is €160 per year for a TV. That sounds very, very primitive. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, I do have a few gripes with RTE. First one, good friend of mine, Donegal Dooling, we did many walks for Irish Realtor Association, charity walks all over the world, Jordan, Israel, South Africa, Malaysia, and indeed in Ireland too. And Donegal was that type of guy. He was like walking and talking. He was a great local broadcaster for RTE, even though they didn't believe in local broadcasting. But Donegal always had his tape recorder and microphone, and he would make small little interviews and pick up music from local people on those walks, especially the Irish walks, and get interesting stories. And around the time of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, when the Crown forces, that's the British forces, were locking up Irish men and women, I guess, too, and throwing them into H Block and the Maze prison. And you might remember some of those protests, because they want to be known as political prisoners, not your typical thief or robber. And I'll come to those thieves and robber too in a minute. So Donegal and a bunch of friends organised a little charity thing to bring toys at Christmas time up for the children of those parents that were locked up in H Block and the Maze at the time, and what other prisons in Northern Ireland. And the RTE management and GM, as he was called, thought it was dubious and not right and suspicious, and they kind of thought it may have some connection with Sinn Féin IRA. Okay, let's call it out as it is. Donegal, my good friend, dear friend, he passed away only a few years ago in 1991, was brought into the office in RTE, the head office, on Christmas Eve, and told he was going to be fired, sacked, and relieved of his job as a broadcaster. And he explained it very well to me and to other people too, that on that evening of Christmas Eve, which is kind of an emotional evening in itself for many of you, I'm sure, he said the guy just told him, you're fired. And it was to do with that situation, even though there was no connection at all, just basically a good gesture charity thing. And he said the guy opened or had a bottle of Heady whiskey under his desk drawer, and he poured both of them a large measure, well, something like that, and said, Happy Christmas. That is so, so disgusting to me, my friend Donegal Dooling, to be fired that way. Recently, RTE has been offered, I'll come to the scandals in a moment, the recent scandals of RTE. Let me start with that. During COVID, when everyone everywhere, all the world, especially in Ireland, had the lockdown, businesses were shut down, people didn't have incomes, they didn't have jobs, they were surviving during the lockdown, they were praying for vaccines, cure, anything possible so things would get relieved. The boys and girls in RTE were receiving huge bonuses, cash bonuses. I mean, huge amounts, while all of this was going on. Top dogs, one of the main top dogs, Ryan Tuberty, who presented the Late Late Show, Gay Byrne found him on a toy show, which is appropriate now. At the time, I think Gay Byrne gave him a teddy bear for Christmas, and after that, it was all about love, wasn't it? Just nicely generous. So since that time, Ryan Tuberty couldn't stop taking gifts. But there was more than him, and they kept taking it from a company called, I think it's NK, let me double check the name. NK, Noel Kelly, was a talent agent. And that's a cushy number to have if you're a talent agent. So he's basically writing a letter to someone in RT saying, we, or you, or whoever, need more money to keep this broadcaster talent guy on, and bonus, bonus, bonus. And of course it was laundered through the English banks, of course, just to make it a little bit more dirty, I guess, yeah. And this went on and on and on and on and on and on. until it eventually was leaked. And you can Google it. You don't have to take my word for it. And there's lots of things that are in Google, and there's lots of things that are not in Google. And there are things that should be in Google. And indeed, there are people that should be locked up in jail for being thieves and robbers. And then I'll continue there. But let me get Jimmy to sing a song for you in the meantime. And then I'll come back to you to explain more. But to hold your attention, RTE are getting 750 million euro in the next 3 years from the Irish government. In the next 3 years, they're going to be getting 750 million from the Irish government, spread out over 3 years. Also, An Post is getting 6 million to pay the guys going around collecting the license. Now, I don't like to be that person that presents a problem if I don't have a solution. Well, you, my listeners, today, and especially for you, I want to tell you how I could spend that 750 million more, better. I could invest it in a way that would be the best investment ever for Ireland. Jimmy, let's do a song for the listeners. You can, Jimmy, sing anything you want. I don't care.
I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me in these last few days. I've been afraid that I might drift away. I've been telling old stories, singing songs that made me think about where I came from, and that's the reason why I seem so far away today. But let me tell you that I love you, and that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Oh, I have moved and I've kept on moving, proved the points that I needed proving. I have lost the friends that I needed losing, found others on the way. I have tried and I've kept on trying, stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. I have traveled far with my conscience flying, somewhere with the wind. But let me tell you that I love you, and that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, and now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Now I'm sitting here before the fire, the empty room, the forest choir. Oh, the flames that couldn't get any higher, they've withered now, they've gone. But I am steady, thinking my way's clear, and now I know what I'll do tomorrow. When the hands are shaking and the kisses flow, then I will disappear. But let me tell you that I love you, and that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had.
Okay, I'm back to you now. Again, I'll pick up where I left off. So RTE getting 750 million euros over 3 years. That's a lot of cash. Now, the post office crowd are getting 6 million to pay what's known as the license inspector guy to go around and collect €160 from people he thinks are avoiding paying the license. Well, the first thing I advise people in Ireland, and I hope they're listening, I know I have listeners out there, is the first thing I'd say, that license should be abolished completely. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then to pay on plus 6 million to pay a guy or guys to go around and collect it. So if you're listening and if you're someone in rural Ireland and if you see a little car stopping in front of your gate or down the path, my advice, let the dogs out, okay? Close the front door. Now, what will I do with those TV license inspectors? You want me to have a solution to a problem? Well, they would be gone because the license fee is gone. And I would get them a job working in the Irish Parliament in the Dáil. I've been there a few times myself in the bar in the Dáil. What I noticed was the toilets in the bar could do with a janitor. And I would promote those TV license inspectors to be janitors in the toilet cleaning operation in the Dáil in the bar. It hasn't been cleaned since the last time Charles J. Hoy took a crap in there. Okay, now you want to move on to the bigger money. The 750 million that RTE has promised from the Irish government just recently. Now, I don't know who the Minister of Finance is. I didn't bother to Google that, but I know we had some funny ones in the past. There was one Minister of Finance one time, and he didn't even have a checking account himself. But the civil service in Ireland are very, very good people, and they're very well trained, and I hope they're not slipping up. That minister at the time, the guy that didn't have the checking book, he was brought up in an inquiry one time where he received £30,000. So he had to explain where he got it. So he said he won it on a horse, right? And then he was asked the name of the horse, and he said he couldn't remember the name of the horse. So I remember when I was building my restaurant, Mother Hubbard's, and it's on another podcast here, and on a Saturday evening with my friend Tommy Joe Murphy from Glencastle, we said we'd take an early Saturday off, and we went into Infield to the bookie office, and a couple of guys from Bangor owned horses, Jordans and Ruddies, and there was two horses on the same day running from the same village that we knew. Wasn't much, and I'm still not much of a gambler. So I said to my friend Tommy Joe Murphy, I said, we put a bet on the first race, and if we win, we walk out the door. So the first race, we say, was at 2:30, and the name of the horse was called, I remember, what the horse won. The name of the horse was called One for the Boys. So we put £10 on, I guess, or €10 on. I know Michael D. McAndrew is listening to this and he thinks cheap. No, Michael D. If you take the price of a pint of Guinness down in Bessie's, that's like us putting on €100, okay, between us. Anyways, forget that. I'm not going to bitch about it because we won. And when you win, no need to explain. When you lose, you shouldn't be around. Simple as that. Adolf Hitler said that. So our horse won One for the Boys, and we collected about, it must have been great odds. We had about over £300 between us, or maybe each. And you know what I said? We said we'd walk out the door when we collected money. And you know where we went? Yes, we went to the local bar, and we said, now we'll have a drink. One for the boys. If you win on a horse like that, don't forget his name. Now, I promised you I'd tell you how I would spend the money, the 750 million, and here I'm going to explain it to you now. RTE is based out in D4, it's called, for Donnybrook, and it's out there on a huge site, actually, acres and acres and acres, and it's a beautiful location, Dublin 4, and what I would do there, I'm getting rid of the license inspector guys, they're gone, and then I would disband an RTE as well. They no longer serve the same function they served back in the 1920s, okay? Local radio stations like Midwest Radio, Galway, Bay FM, you go up to Donegal, Highland Radio, you go down to Clare FM, you go down to Kerry. And what those local radio stations are achieving and doing for all of Ireland in their own way is more than anything RTE ever did for anybody in Ireland. They provide local news. They provide local news of events like festivals and things. They're very keen to help anyone starting a new business or local business. I remember myself, when I went back, I think Midwest opened in 1988, maybe 89, and I was setting up a new business, and I did my advertisement with them. And it was brilliant because now people know where I am. They know what I'm selling. They know what I'm doing. They know where my location is. And it was just excellent. Pub Roundup was where you list your events for darts and pool events and all that. And people get to know. It's called branding. I had it on here with Tom Sanchez from United Print Group, if you want to check out that podcast. But now let me get back to where I started. The 750 million, I'm going to tell you right now, without a further delay. I would disband an RTE completely. All I would leave them with there is a museum and archives and maybe 3 or 4 people. At the moment, they only hire less than 2,000 anyway. So it's not like they're hiring a huge amount, but they're sitting on a huge amount of real estate, right? Follow me carefully. And if you're a QS guy, quantity surveyor, pay more attention. Turn your volume up now. So I would get rid of RTE per se, and I would take over that complete site. It has the infrastructure of electricity, water, sewage, things I didn't have when I started in the public. I would build a state-of-the-art hospital there, not just a hospital, a training hospital to train nurses and doctors from all over the world. Because we're always saying we have a medical problem in Ireland. We don't have enough nurses and we don't have enough doctors. Well, this is the solution. You build a state-of-the-art hospital for training and you invite them from everywhere and anywhere, especially from the 6 counties in Northern Ireland. The best surgeons are in Northern Ireland. You hear it time and time again, especially for any people looking for knee replacements. And you might have to dig a little deep to find where my train of thought is going with that. And everyone would be welcome from all over the world, scholarships accepted. And I would ask for sponsors. And one of the big sponsors I would be reaching out to is a car company. I know the last time here I did a podcast about rural Ireland, and I gave great credit to Japan for putting reclining seats in cars because it helped my sex life in County Mayo and others too, of course. But I'm not going to Japan this time. Renault is another car company based in Ireland. They were the main sponsor of the Late Show, and they were the guys and company that gave out free cars to everyone and anyone that worked for RTE, just so they could be seen driving around in their car. So the shameless, scandalous situation of an Irish government using the taxpayers' money to fund an organisation whose staff resigned and probably got their pensions on the exit. And indeed, there are stories about some of them that felt grieved and were trying to protest outside RTE. Well, that's like a bunch of robbers protesting outside a bank. Let's call it an Irish bank, protesting saying there's not enough money inside. Well, you know who's inside? The thief is inside. Because the guy inside is a bigger thief than the thief outside. I hate to address this in that kind of sad light. But when I see hardworking people in Ireland, successful radio stations like Midwest Radio, like Galway Bay, like Donegal Highland Radio, doing the great work and having the passion for the people in the community, giving funeral and death notices and events and in times of calamities like storms and weather and power outages, the radio is your friend, and they do it with such high a level of excellence. So to you, my friends, listen, I'm going to sign off in my native language, Oscailga, and there is Tina G, and there is Friday Night Gaelscoch, and my good friend in Castlebar was Sean O'Healy, and he was a one-man band there running RTE Oscailga, just one guy, and I never asked Sean, like, for the few hours work that he did, but he enjoyed doing the broadcast. So I'll say, Shin Scale, that's the Irish for that's the story. Agus Bé Scale Ella, that means there will be another story. My heart is broken hearing the scandals of RTE and the abuse of the Irish taxpayers' money.